might be a tricky question, but let's talk a little bit about pay structure a little bit more, because it's tough, right? Some outlets pay more than others. Some outlets will wait a month to pay you. A lot of outlets
most outlets will wait a while to pay you.
Right, right. And also alternative forms of funding. For example, you mentioned the Off-World Kickstarter. We can talk about that as well as other ways to get paid.
Oh no, in Off-World's case, I'm going to talk about Kickstarter for a bit. In Off-World's case, what happened, there's a compilation Kickstarter that's currently on. They have a nice print version of some of the essays. It's the art and the
Are you all familiar with Off-World?
Yeah. Who's already familiar with Off-World? Okay, a few people. Off-World is, it's done by Boy, I think. And it's kind of their kind of alt-news site. It's kind of their, where the critiques go into, again, that's where I pitched my article about comparing it to ancient Japanese poetry, you know. That's kind of where that kind of goes into. And they've had really great essays. I think there was one that a friend of mine did about religion in Dragon Age, and about how Metal Gear Solid 5 or Metal Gear Solid series has eye candy, but for girls, like you're viewing it through not just the male gaze, but the female gaze, which is very interesting. That's where kind of those articles end up. And it's a major, major site, and they pay very well for game sites. By very well, I mean $150 for an essay. That is substantial to me, but at the same time, keep in mind if you're a freelancer, you're gonna have to pitch a lot to get anywhere close to paying your bills. So a lot of people have other jobs on the side, exactly.
The pays even better than that, but it is a challenge trying to find the right topics.
Yeah.
For example, Playboy does not blend all fandoms together, so their games. They do not allow anime and games articles in the games channel at all because the official policy is the audience doesn't see any value in the crossover. And that's how they do it. I pitched an article on anime-based games, and they just said, we don't think there's substantial crossover in our readership to work with this. It's a great idea, but we can't really do it. So it can be challenging to find the right place to do it and to run with it.
Right. In Off-World's case, there's also the question of rights involved. When you do a gig on spec, and you write an article on spec, you basically sign your rights away. The editor is supposed to make reasonable edits to it only, but they may change it for a more link-baity type title, like one weird trick about this game sort of idea.
Getting your headline changed is a super common thing. Like you'll title your article one thing and you get an idea what title it's going to end up.
It's gotten to the point where I don't even bother with titles anymore. I just expect it to be changed, so I don't even have one.
I do exactly the same thing.
So you sign these rights away, and in Off-World's case, what they did was you preserve the reprint or republication rights. So when they did the compilation Kickstarter, they actually had to go around and not only ask the people who had previously contributed, that they previously paid, for permission to reprint their work. They also say, oh, by the way, because we're doing a Kickstarter to fund the printing of this book, we're going to give you money for the reprint rights too. So you get paid twice. And the more money we give to the Kickstarter, that the Kickstarter raises, the more money we pay to the writers. So of course the writers were like, oh yes, we don't see this ever, thank God, you know, like, this is great. But read your contracts carefully if you get them, and beware of any venue that does not want to give contracts out ever. So part of the payment tiers goes into what you're actually signing away in return for that payment.
It may be tempting sometimes to grab something without a contractor from a startup, and they're like, oh, they're going to pay me this, and this. I'm going to say more likely than not, you will not get paid from them.
Yeah.
They might be using this just to get your stuff, and if they don't offer a contract, then they have no incentive to pay you at all. Like, I didn't get a contract from initially from Playboy, but it's Playboy. It's one of those things where they've been around long enough. They are legit out there. Other websites that I worked for was literally an actual or virtual handshake with the person running the site to get it done. And I've been lucky I got paid for it, but I know people who published and contributed articles and never saw a dollar, even though they were promised all this stuff. And the general response was, "They'll take us to court."
And without a contract,
There's nothing you can do
there's
about
nothing
it.
you can do.
Unless you're in the state of Virginia and there's witnesses that saw you shake the guy's hand, then you get some recourse.
Did not know that.
Yeah. So be very careful of what you're being asked to do before you agree to any payment whatsoever. In terms of payment tiers, I tend, unless I know the person or I know the vendor, like if it's stabilizer, if I can point to a concrete, will this help me down the line to get exposure or experience in a concrete way, not that vague, oh, for your exposure, it's like, yeah, I can't pay the bill with exposure, exposure is illegal in most states.
Do you guys remember Will Wheaton's article on his blog about when Huffington Post wanted to reprint his blog and said that they don't pay their writers?
They don't,
So
by
he
the way.
said no.
Yeah.
I think he raised really great points with that, especially if an outlet like HuffPo or maybe one will come to you. I had a friend who wrote for the gay lifestyle in Huffington Post, and he eventually stopped because they said they were going to promise him money after 10 articles, and he wrote 10 articles, and they said, well, we don't have the money to pay you. And he's looking at all the ads on his articles and how the articles were pulling 100,000 to 200,000 hits per article, and he's saying to himself, how is it that they don't have money to pay me when my articles are generating massive amounts of ad revenue for them? So he pulled out and started writing for another venue. This is something we'll hear where if it's a big enough website, they will use the exposure thing of you, and I 100% agree with Luigi's assessment that if you're going to write it and they're going to publish it and they're going to make money off it, then you better damn well get paid. And if Huffington Post approached me and said, write for us, if they offered me $50, I would take it at that point because I'm getting a little bit of money and I'm getting exposure. If they walked up to me and said, hey, we want this article for free, I would probably say no. Even if it's a little something, it's going to show that you're going to get something off the deal.
Or then we get into the thing about review copies. I've never actually,
Yeah, let's talk about the intangibles, like the free games and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
The last time I got a review copy was back in 2011. It was for Chantilly on Steam, which was done by the same people who did Recettear, which some of you may have heard of. That was the only time, that was the last time I got a Steam code from PR to do this. The last game that I covered as a sort of review essay, that I don't even, I had to pay out of my own pocket to get the game opening weekend so I could write the review. And yes, I was technically making money off the deal, but that $50 of the review of Yokai Watch I did paid for that game that I bought with my own money before that I had to write the review.
And I'm curious about that too, because sometimes you can do one-for-one, I'm going to send you this game, but you have to write a review of it. That's the work you're putting in to get that up front. Other times, you buy the game and then you get paid for the article. It's the same exchange, really. But some people say that having to pay out of pocket is the fairer way. Other people think review copies is the fairer way. And I'm not sure. On the fence, I've done a little bit of both. I've reviewed games I purchased and I've reviewed games with Steam keys. So I usually just say whether or not.
I have only reviewed games that I own. I discovered that in terms of just for general education, the music industry, they will throw stuff at you. It is very easy to get music for review if you want to review albums. It is not hard. I use it all the time. Books, much the same. I still get free books from the University of Minnesota Press from their anime and fan cultures department, just because they want to get more people to write and talk about them. Games, I have hit nothing but brick walls. Games and anime, I keep hitting brick walls. I guess it's because the publication or the pricing structure is a lot higher. It had a video game was handing you a $60 because of the $60 toy and you're reviewing it, whereas with music it's infinitely cheaper price point. But I have noticed that you have to do your homework based on who you're talking to. I've gotten some indie games where after I've already bought it, the people have given me keys.
It's
after
easier to
I've
get.
bought it and reviewed it from an indie.
It is easier to
indie
it's
studio.
easier to get independent games because they are hungry for the exposure.
Yes, and part of that is kind of know what you're doing up front, and make it very clear what you're doing up front. In my case, again, the last time I got a Steam key was actually for basically what was an indie game. But
I mean, sometimes you get discount codes. I mean, I did a thing where I did a full convention lecture about something about a particular game, and they gave me a 50% off discount, so I was able to get it for cheaper.
And you also may hit a situation where you're getting more games rolling in than you have time to review.
Yeah.
I know that I run into the problem of people asking me to review their game, and I know that it's not on my, it's not on my next to-do list for this month, and it's actually turning the keys down. And again, it's mostly independent games. You know, I do my best to deal with that kind of thing. Honestly, it can be tough sometimes because you do get a lot of pitches at you. Once you're on a press list or two, you're start getting a lot of emails.
I'm still on the press list for Influencer because I've gotten a DLC from them. Influence is language learning game, so yeah. So, but then you kind of get into especially now, and especially when I got started in writing about games, everybody's kind of asking like, oh, I want to write about games. It's gonna be so much fun. And so a lot of the venues are actually inundated with pitches and inundated with people wanting to write for them. Or there's always free sites that have writers that they're not going to pay. And so there's always going to be people that are hungry for exposure and sites that are, hungry for the ad revenue.
And a lot of people will start new sites not realizing how much work it is to start and maintain a site. And keep it going and keep the writers happy. And I've seen a lot of sites, a couple months they are around and then they don't really last because it's a lot more work for people to do. I have one more question for